Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be. Welcome back to Honey Badger Radio. My name is Brian, and this is the Twitter X Space, formerly Brian's Badger Lodge. More or less. It's basically like the call-in show, but you can use X to do so. I will host an X Space, present a topic, and we can discuss it with anybody who wants to join the X Space, or send a super chow by going to feedthebadger.com/just the tip and sending us a message. You can also use super chats or rumble rants, and I will accept those as well, and I really appreciate it. Today, so first of all, let me give you guys a little bit of reason why we are doing this today. One of them is because Allison has been busy the last few days putting out her latest video about silver, and it is available now. I don't know if you guys watched it yet. I have not watched it yet. I haven't had time, but we are going to be looking at some stuff because Allison is not available. And I ran into, by Providence, a couple of things that I thought were interesting because they are related, and we are seeing more and more of this happening, more of this conversation evolving. But first of all, before we get into it, if you want to join the X Space, I have one person in here with me right now. I believe is Quantum Cat. And Quantum Cat, you can lurk if you want to, or you can speak up if you want to say something as well. Just, make a request and I will accept your request and let you hang out in here and talk with me. But if you want to join it, the Lex Space, there's a link in the description of this video, so you can go and you'll have to log into X and then you can join the X Space. So before we get started, I'm going to say a shout out to the people that are watching. Hello, David Lowboy, Richard Bier, and Mr. 0303 for now. I know that more of you guys will be hopefully trickling in as, as we get this road on the show, as it were. But okay, so let's go ahead and talk about what it is that I'm going to be looking at. So, we talk a lot about the issues faced by men and boys on this channel. It's the focus of our channel. And one of the things that I have also been warning about is that there will be potential consequences for society at large if we continue to ignore this problem. And I think that everyone, or at least a lot of people, have been working really hard to avoid discussing the issues facing men and boys and women's part to play in those issues, as well as maybe larger systemic reasons for it, the way that our education system is run, the way that our governments are run, the way that our media works, all these other things are contributing to this problem. And it doesn't appear to show many signs of slowing down. But I have noticed that two people have recently had some things to say that one of them was directly pointing to this. Another one was sort of talking around it, but it's interesting that they're both kind of arriving at the same place. And these two people are Andrew Tate and Dr. Warren Farrell. And it's interesting because those two guys could not be more different, in terms of just what they stand for, who they are, and what they believe. They're very disparate figures. Now, I'm not saying that they're agreeing on anything per se, but they do appear to converge at this point, which is what kind of society do we have when we disenfranchise men and boys and discriminate against them openly, or we create conditions for them that makes it very difficult for them to essentially live in a world like this. And expect them to actually not just live and not complain, but also contribute and help build it even more. And so I thought we could look at both of these clips that I have here and also look at a couple of other things. I have some notes here on my phone. And I just want to point this out. So this is about fatherlessness to an extent, but also disenfranchisement of men in general. So, we have, let me see here. Boys growing up without a father will have a higher risk of emotional struggles like depression or low self-esteem. They will also struggle with discipline, leading to behavioral issues, poor academic performance. They might have trouble forming healthy relationships or feel pressure to act, a certain way to performative masculinity in order to compensate because they don't have a model of masculinity to operate off of. Or they are looking to their peers for models, which are often also other men who don't have fathers. Economically, they're more likely to end up in lower paying jobs. And this is another issue because men who don't do as well financially are, guess what, less likely to attract a mate because the women want men with more money, no matter how old they are, by the way, which we're going to get into a little bit later. They're also going to face legal troubles or have lower paying jobs because of a lack of mentorship. So these are just some of the things. And of course, we know that Warren Farrell has written a book on this called The Boy Crisis, where he goes into that. But let's take a look at our clips. So I will start with Andrew Tate because it's probably going to be a little bit more emotionally charged, but this is interesting. So Tate, for context, he was on the PBD podcast, which is run by a businessman named Patrick Bet David. He's Iranian and he's been hosting a podcast for a while. He's a very, very wealthy guy. So we're looking at, guys that are like pretty elite in terms of, well, I would say pretty elite, maybe not the elites, because I think those guys are on another level, but very well-off guys that, have good businesses, make good money. And they talk a lot about money and like stocks and finance, but they've lately been getting into these more social and cultural discussions. And they brought Andrew Tate on. Full context here. I believe the reason why they were talking to him was because Tate was recently, I don't know if it was at a party or if he was hosting a party, probably hosting a party. And there were a bunch of young Zoomer influencers that were there, and they were listening to the clips that were really viral was them listening to that Kanye West song, the one. I won't say the lyrics here, but the song that he put out that was very triggering for people. And he did it because he was angry about losing access to his kids, which is also part of this whole thing. 'Cause that's basically like what a lot of this is revolving around the same issues. They're just sort of like being dealt with in different ways. But anyway, there were clips of them listening to the music and having a good time. And I guess some of these guys got banned from like all the clubs in Florida or something. I'm not really sure what, because I don't follow those guys very closely. Welcome to the chat, other listener. But I think they brought Tate on to like kind of like shake him down for why this happened. And what it did is it put Tate in a position where he had an opportunity to discuss why this stuff is going on. Like, why are these criticisms being levied against, certain groups of people from a certain ethnic group or a certain religion or whatever. And let's give a listen. I'm not sure if I'm in the right place, but they are talking about the fact that young men in particular are not able, or at least they have every obstacle in their way of trying to like achieve. So let's give a listen. And Quantum Cat, I hope you can hear this because I should have the audio set up to where the people in the X space can hear this too. Although I'm not seeing any visual feedback from the sound, so I'm not sure if it's working. But all right, let's give this a listen.
Even though their policies are bullshit, you wonder why they win, even though they put the taxes up, because young people are completely disenfranchised with this system.
Yep. But for the record, he says young people, but he actually begins this by specifically talking about young men. Okay, so.
Because they are poor. On top of being poor, they're watching social media with people who are rich. Do you understand the envy this is creating? Oh, yeah. Do you understand that a young man can't even talk to a girl because he's not a millionaire? 19-year-old men are saying to me, girls don't talk to me because I have no money. So you're not supposed to have money. You're 19. You're supposed to just be charming and in good shape and have fun. Girls don't want that. Girls want money. The world is completely broken in the West now. It's completely broken. So we've entered this really dangerous stage where if we don't blame Israel, if they find something else to blame, it doesn't matter. Things are going to burn. If you have a whole bunch of young men who are never going to get a family, never going to have any money, never going to own a house. They're completely disenfranchised with the system they live within. If you read a history book, that ends one way, sooner or later. And we need to bring these people into the system. If we want to be capitalistic, and all of us are capitalists, we need to at least offer the young people a chance to play the game. We can't say capitalism's fantastic, communism's terrible, capitalism's the best, but you can't play. Here's my Bugatti. No one.
So, okay, so he basically, and another thing he says, and I don't know if it's in this clip, because I was trying to find it, but I saw this viral clip where he basically said that if you want to, and this is what I've been saying too, and Mike has been saying this as well. Hello, Quantum Cat. I don't know, can you not hear me, or you're not able to hear the video? Well, the 45-minute part that was just about the song. Oh, wasn't as much of an interview as a struggle session. Yeah, I know. This is indeed muted in the X space. How? I don't understand that. I don't understand it. All right, well, I'll just reiterate. So what he's saying is, for people who are in the X space, what he's saying is I have to figure out a way to share video in here. Unless you just can't do it. Like, I guess that might just be a thing. You can't do it in X. He's saying that young men they're basically being kept out of an opportunity to build wealth and to build business and to essentially, like, they can't afford a house, they can't get a decent job, they're not getting the education they need. Even if they're ambitious, they followed all the rules. And that's the thing too. Like, most of us, even me, like Gen X is in a similar situation. We as men, we were born into the world and we were told that if you go to school and you get a decent education and you find a good job, a decent job, even get a high school education, get a job, you can find a young lady, you can get married, you can start a family, buy a house, the whole thing. And all these men, most of these men probably went in saying, okay, I'm going to follow the rules, I'm going to do all those things. And then none of it is panning out for like a lot of these guys. And the younger guys have it even harder. Like, as you get older, you start to like figure out the system is not really working in your favor and you have to like maneuver and figure out alternative methods. But like a lot of these guys, they went in earnestly trying to follow the rules and they figured this was going to work, right? The system is set up this way, but it's not working out that way. They're not. And even when they do have what they need, like they do have a decent job, guess what? The women don't want them. And why is that? Well, because the women are getting favored in education, they're getting favored in hiring, they're making more money, and so because they're making more money and they're doing jobs, a lot of them are just made up, like HR jobs or like they host meetings. You've seen those jobs where the women go to coffee breaks every 5 minutes, and they think that's what life is. They're like, well, that's what work is, and if I can do it and make six figures, why can't I find a man that does that? And of course, they don't see any men out there, so their perspective on reality is completely distorted and they can't find a decent man. And this is important. I know that this isn't really like, people would say that men's issues aren't really about like, say, natalism or marriage, but like if you don't, it's a root thing. If we don't address, there's just going to be chaos and destruction. Like laws around, say, like false allegations or family courts or divorce or child custody, like all those things don't matter if people are not even talking to each other. If men and women are not even like anywhere near the same page, all that other stuff is irrelevant. So in my opinion, we have to like be able to talk about this at this level, right? So what these men are going to do, and this is like, again, not a condemnation of men, but some of them are going to create problems for society because they're going to see that society does not serve their interests. They're going to retaliate. They're going to look for someone to blame. And one thing that Tate said that I've been saying, and I think Mike has said this too, is that these other issues that people get swept up in, like they talk about, Israel, they talk about the mass migration, or they're talking about capitalism, or they're talking about like all these other things, like Islam, whatever it is, right? Porn addiction. None of those things matter if men are in like stable marriages with women. Like that, like all that, like even women being a problem goes away because women tend to side with men if they're in, a committed relationship with them. But the problem is that that's completely like, discombobulated right now. And so there is no place for men to go, and women are not, like, they're hostile towards them right now. So like this is a problem that's being created by the system that men were trying to, like, participate in earnest. And now they're very cynical. I don't think it's envy that much, because I know that Tate said that. I don't think that's really the problem. I think that most men would be happy to have, like, they don't need like the mansion and the Bugattis and all that. I think they'd be happy to have, like, a home where they can raise a family. Like, they want to just like slide neatly into the middle class and just live that way. But if you take that away from them and you make them feel like they are not allowed to have it or they don't deserve it, and you call them privileged and all these other things, you make it very difficult for them to go up in the world just enough to like get by on their own, you're going to create a situation where they're going to want to burn the system down, and they're definitely going to point fingers. And, at the end of the day, you are responsible for your life choices, but we have to understand that we're not helping them. And I think that this is what he identifies. So, let's see. To the Chicken says, how to make money. Tell people to follow the path, then put toll booths on it. Daniel Forgak says, yeah, no, don't think we live in a capitalist system. Too much collusion of government and companies to control it all. Well, yeah, no, I get that. No. And I don't even frankly, I don't even like the word capitalism. I think it's like a buzzword used by commies to criticize property rights. Richard Bier says, watch the video earlier where James O'Keefe, honeypot, talked to an FBI agent who was saying that the Somali welfare fraud is likely to go unpunished. Yeah, you're changing the subject, Richard. Please don't do that. Daniel Forgak says, even if men do get envious, it usually motivates them to try to achieve. Yes, that's what I'm saying. But like, if the system is rigged against them, which in many ways it is, it's like, why bother? This is what I'm saying. Like, why? So what men are doing mostly, they're just checking out. They're just basically like doing their own thing. Because like a man can live on very little. So he can do like a minimum wage job or like a lower paying job and just sort of do his own thing and pay for his own shit and just like be like that. And it's probably, I don't think it's good in the long run, but I understand why they're doing it. The Last Statue says hi. Hello, Last Statue. So anyway, he says somebody's got to go back and get a shitload of dimes. I don't get that. David Lowboy says all you need is a comfy chair, air mattress, big screen console, and an internet connection. Yeah, that's yes, of course. So anyway, so he basically says that if you want to end all of this like fear mongering about, like anti-Semitism, for example, which is what they sort of like talk about mostly, all you got to do is basically like take care of the men, and they will, because the thing is too, is that they're less likely to get, let's say, interfered with at that level as well. They'll go, instead of going to a bank, they'll go to a fucking credit union or something, and they'll just build their own business and avoid involving themselves with the Jays. But what's happening is that they are looking for, I don't want to call it a scapegoat because it's not like it's not untrue, but they're looking for a means, something to look at and say, this is why me trying to follow the rules did not work. You see what I'm saying? So they're like, I'm trying to follow the rules and it's not working. I'd recommend PC over console since you can still emulate things. You're changing the subject again. Okay. So anyway, Andrew Tate identifies the problem. But the problem is that men have been left behind. And he doesn't say women, but women's dealing with this is different. Like they're basically just, voting in communists like Mamdani and stuff. And it's because their desire for free shit hasn't changed. So they're just going to get it. They don't get it from the men in their life. They're going to get it from the state. And that's what they're doing. but they don't have to worry so much about like, achieving, because they do get enough of that already. Like they get, like I said, they get preferential hiring because of DEI. They get, they probably get paid less than a man does because they're not as competitive, but women don't need to worry about their money as much because they can just beg for it or just get it from their parents or just get it from, their orbiters or whatever, and then they'll be fine, right? But men don't have that opportunity. They can't, they don't have orbiters to go to. They don't have simps that they can like, e-beg from or like have them pay for their apartment or whatever. So you have a very lopsided outcome right now, where in the past women would get support from the men in their life, but now men can't provide that because they're, being handicapped by this system. And women are doing okay, and they have found other ways to get by. They know how to get that bag while securing their own bag. So I blame the subject changers. Yeah. Huey says, you obviously don't know what DEI is. Okay, why don't you educate me on what DEI is? Tell me what it is. Let's hear it. To the Chicken says, it's like cutting down enough trees until you get the one that's been messing with your allergies until you find it, you just keep cutting. Yeah. But anyway, so let's look at Warren Farrell's. And by the way, again, if you're in here and you want to say something, just put a request in. I see InQCell is in here, so you can put a request if you want to speak on anything. So here's Warren Farrell. He has a different story, but it's sort of like the same thing in its own way.
Tragic letter, the most tragic letter I've ever received, but it tells so much in a short period that I want to share this with you. Dr. Farrell, my mother was a feminist when she was young and chose to be a single mother voluntarily. Not having a...
Pausing it there for a second. So I'm going to repeat it for the people in the Twitter space. So Warren Farrell's reading a letter that he got from someone who read his book, The Boy Crisis. And the person is telling his story, this man who wrote him this letter. And he says, my mother was a feminist who chose to be basically became a single mother voluntarily. So, again, just to sort of like add to this, yes, there are single moms who exist voluntarily. Probably all of them. Like on some level, most of them, right? Like there are some women who made babies with a guy or like had children with a man that they deluded themselves into thinking he was going to stick around and he didn't. But I think by and large, at the end of the day, women do, like, being a single mom is a choice. Okay. So he opens with this: a feminist who becomes a single mom voluntarily. Okay.
A father left a void in my life and a hole in my heart. The Boy Crisis described my life so accurately that if I didn't know better, I'd have thought you were spying on me.
So he says the not having a father basically ruined my life. Like I could tell that if I had a father, I would be better off. And his book, The Boy Crisis, proves that. It was like you knew my life even though you don't know me.
Growing up, I was not motivated to be involved with my peers, and my mother never pushed me to excel in academics. I developed an addiction to video games, which facilitated a life of increasing dysfunction and isolation that ended up with me being a recluse.
Okay, so he basically goes on to say that he, because he didn't have a father, he wasn't able to socialize well. He didn't have any friends. He got addicted to video games, or it's video games, or it's some other sort of distraction, and he was basically a recluse as a result. His mother didn't help him. She didn't push him, in any way. She didn't support him. At least this is what his claim is. So I see that Huey says DEI is to give more opportunities for everyone to apply for every job opportunity that's available. It has nothing to do with hiring, as they still hire the qualified workers. Why does it exist if people can get a job based on their own merit? Why do you need DEI? Because from what you're saying, That just sounds like regular ass hiring. So explain to me how that is like if you remove DEI, would that change equal opportunity? That I don't think it would. So let's just explain that, okay? Because I think you've been lied to, Huey. I think that you're under the impression that if DEI didn't exist, brown people and women would not get jobs. And I'm telling you right now, that's ridiculous. That's ridiculous because I'm brown and I got jobs, okay? And I did it before we had DEI and like affirmative action, whatever you want to call it. So I want you to explain to me why DEI is necessary for people to get jobs if it isn't, unless of course they are unqualified and they get them anyway because you have to meet a quota. But anyway, let's continue.
I also developed a porn addiction.
Okay, so he says he also developed a porn addiction. So he became addicted to video games and porn, this guy who wrote this in.
Due to not having a traditional outlet to release my sexual tension.
Because he didn't have a traditional outlet to release sexual tension, i.e. he didn't have a girlfriend or a wife or whatever.
As a teenager. All of this was exacerbated by being socially ostracized and having frequent, intense, and vicious arguments with my mother.
So he also was ostracized and he had frequent arguments with his mother. So his mom sounds like a real character, I guess.
I was still living in my mother's basement and got heavily involved with 4chan and 8chan.
All right, I'm not laughing at the situation. It's just the way that Warren Farrell reads it out. He says that this young man, he lived in his mother's basement, in essentially what sounds like a very hostile environment, and he was addicted to video games and addicted to porn, and then he started going on 4chan and 8chan. So he was on 4chan and 8chan all the time. Okay.
I became involved, that is, with neo-fascist ideologies.
And he says, I got involved with neo-fascist ideologies. Okay.
And I was active within the incel community as well.
And he was active within the incel community.
I actually interacted briefly with the Aztec high school shooter.
He said he interacted briefly with the Aztec high school shooter. I don't remember the Aztec high school shooter. Was that the Mexican guy that had like I don't remember the Aztec shooter. Let me see if I can look it up really quick while you guys are chatting there. Huey says, sounds like a bunch of grown men blaming other people for your shortcomings. What are you saying? Like, who are you talking to? DEI takes away opportunities from straight white men, which is wrong, obviously. A David Lowboy says, oh no, 4chan and 8chan? I hope he didn't discover 16chan or 32chan. It may be worth it to summarize a minute of speech, not every 5 words. All right. Ian Mangum says, I believe them. Amazing who you talk to on YouTube. MGTOW Cowboy says, we socially and economically dispossess young men, then wonder why the men reject liberal ideology. Yeah. Well, because it's not serving them. Exactly. And they're like, fuck it, I'm going to try something crazier. Who is the Aztec shooter? Okay, I'll play some more. It's almost over anyways.
Through my contacts in the neo-fascist community, and I myself had written a 52-page manifesto outlining my plans to do a mass shooting. I slowly began to realize something was seriously wrong and my mental health had deteriorated dramatically as well. The boy crisis helped make sense of why I became who I was, and it was like waking up from a coma. I decided to go get help, and I've recently been diagnosed with schizotypal personality disorder. I've slowly been making progress at getting my life together. If it was not for you, sir, I think I would have eventually acted out on the beliefs expressed in my manifesto, as others that I worked with did in 8chan, such as the El Paso shooter Patrick Crusius or the Christchurch, New Zealand shooter Brenton Tarrant had. So I want to personally thank you because I feel like you have saved not only my life, but potentially the lives of other innocent people. Sincerely, Carlos.
So, all right, to sum up, he basically wrote a 52-page manifesto, according to this letter, with the intent, potentially, of committing another a mass shooting. He was I guess he spoke to guys like the El Paso shooter and the New Zealand Christchurch shooter, because they were all on some board somewhere, I suppose. But he decided to get help instead because he read Warren Farrell's book. Of course, none of this can be 100% confirmed. I think Warren Farrell definitely got a letter. I don't think he would read it out in front of an audience if it wasn't real. But I think that it does point to the thing that I was talking about. People are noticing that there are, unfortunately, negative consequences to disenfranchising men for long enough. And I hate that it has to come to stuff like this for people to actually have a reaction, but that appears to be where we are now. So the Aztec shooter was William Atchison, a 21-year-old former student of Aztec High School, was the shooter in the December 7th, 2017 school shooting at Aztec High School in Aztec, New Mexico. I didn't know about that, but that was 2017. Yeah. So we have both of these guys, and they are looking at what is going to be an issue if we don't figure out a way to get men and women to like each other again. All right, so let me see what you guys are saying. And again, if you want to join us, go join the link in the description of this video, and you can join the X Space, and you can talk to me if you want to. So, all right, let's see. MGTOW Cowboy says, Warren Farrell equals good guy. Yes, I think he's a good guy. I met him. Huey, blaming women is morally correct. We aren't blaming women and bringing back patriarchy enough. Murder of Crows says, so we got fed up and pissed off, then came to his senses and had a convo with a Fed. I don't know. David Lowboy says, 52 pages is way too long. Brevity, man. Simplify, edit, and proofread. Daniel Forgak says, the letter kind of comes off as I was bad, now I'll try to be a good little feminist. Well, I don't know about that, but you have to understand that if he goes from potentially becoming a mass shooter to sort of blue-pilled normie, I'll take it. It's better that's a step in the right direction. I'll just say that. Because I think what drives people to do that is the nihilism. That's the problem. MGTOW Cowboy says, Dr. Helen Smith recently stated in an interview I saw, I no longer am proud of calling myself a psychologist because the entire field has become so anti-male. I now prefer to be called an author. Yes, Helen Smith's awesome. She was on Paul Elam's channel the other day, and they had a conversation about her new book, Men's Side, which I highly recommend you guys check out. It's basically an expansion on her old book, Men on Strike, which came out back in the day. Yaz Fringpong says, why is the grapist Trump still in government? Sounds like Chinese spy shit to me. Nobafan says, because he is the man America needs. Okay, you guys are changing the subject. Stop doing that. Marcus Allen says, women think they can fix us. Well, that's because they think that there is something to fix. And that's something that we have to change as well. So, hello, Sally. Welcome to the chat. Do you want to say anything? Put a request in and I'll let you speak. So, yeah, I just looked at two very different guys that are talking about the same problem. And that is essentially that, it's like Gad Saad has said this too. He said that, if men are sitting on their hands for too long and they don't have, because what men want, I think ultimately most men, they want the feeling that they have a purpose and that it's moving towards some kind of goal, right? And for most men, not all men, if you're not one of these men, then congratulations, I'm not talking about you. But for most men, they want to get a decent job or start a business or something, find a nice woman, buy a house, start a family. That's it. This is like the lowest the bar could possibly be. And yet, at almost all of those avenues are closed off, or at least highly obstructed. Getting a job is difficult because the jobs are going to like illegals or foreigners, or they're prioritizing DEI hires, so they're giving them to women. I'm sorry, but it's true, Huey, if you're still there. And so that part, housing is extremely expensive because these, big corporations are buying up all the land and shit, and that's got to change. But even then, even with those two things, it should be okay to find a woman and like work together to build a life, right? But the problem is the women don't want normal men. They want like supermen. They want like super rich guys. They want the 1%. And this is the largest obstacle, frankly. So, let's see. David Lowboy says she can fix these nuts. MGTOW Cowboy, ultimately men want to be useful and be respected. Yeah, but they want to earn the respect. Hello, Ray Patson. Welcome. If you want to say anything, please put in a request and I will give you the floor. Marcus Allen says, I want a geisha girl to work around the house while I hustle money. Hey, you're welcome to try. Stan Durko says, Adolf Trump, ICE, MAGA are terrorists, traitors, and Nazi cowards. Okay, sure. Okay. I mean, I hope you're the star of that movie and that you get to win. Murder of Crows says, some have never heard of It Ain't Broke. If it ain't broke, and if they did, choose to ignore or can't comprehend it. Yeah. Let's see. MGTOW Cowboy says, it's not 80-20 anymore. It's more like 90-10. Maybe it may be more than that, actually. And the thing is, and like Helen Smith said this, and I've said this, we've looked at the studies that show that when you look at what young men want, at the top of their list is like a family, a wife, and a home. Like a job that they like, I mean, everybody wants a job they like. A lot of people don't want a job at all, and they just don't want to need one. But like, these are all, there's nothing radical about that. But what happens if you take that away? If you make that unattainable for the average man? How long will that be before they start to, radicalize? And then can you blame them for that? So, we got about 20 minutes before I got to end the show. So if you're going to say anything, now is the time. Oh, I got a request here. InQcell, okay. You have been invited to speak, sir. What's your take? I've given you the floor. You should not be muted. Oh, there you go. Hello? InQcell, are you going to say anything? Or are you having problems with your microphone? Do you have did you give permissions to the browser? I assume you know how to do that stuff. All right, I'll look at the chat in the meantime so you figure that out. You should be able to talk. All right. Marcus Allen says they listen to media and live in a delusion. The destruction of the nuclear family has broken society. Yes. Well, the destruction of the nuclear family has destroyed community itself. And this is another thing that I've seen where some people are like, I think it was like Tree of Logic. Do you guys know who Tree of Logic is? She was like doing like debate or something in an X space a while back. And she was trying to argue that the nuclear family is not what we should be trying to restore. Because she thinks a nuclear family is like not as important as a community. And I was like, dude, that sounds like commie gobbledygook to me. Because, oh, there you are. Hello? Hello? Oh, I had you, but then you're not talking anymore. Hello, TP T-shirts.
Now?
Yes, hello.
All right, great. I don't know what that was. Yeah, that
You're-
don't really have a take really. It's just the audience for this is rather thin. But every time these sort of things come up, this sort of topic of what to do, I always come to the conclusion that there's really nothing in the way that the system is set up. Like the only thing most people end up really talking about is some variation of how to de-radicalize TM, how to do the de-radicalization things, and how to stop people from going postal, like the guy that Warren Farrell was reading the list from, which, by the way, I have serious doubts that someone was actually in contact. Like, it's not like, I tackled Brandon Tarrant on the 4chans. Yeah, that's very, very unlikely.
Yeah.
So maybe it's just someone that's trying to do like that his presentation just needs that one guy that got better reading it as a sort of favor. I'm not saying he made it up, that like Warren Farrell made it up. I think some guy made it up, just to be like a prop willingly, just to like boost his mission.
Sure.
It's sort of like that, right? But that's beside the point, because the end of the moral of the story at the end of it was that we need to do de-radicalization things before more men go postal, and we need to save the system from itself, fundamentally. And I don't see how you can always prolong it. You can always buy more time, but it's unsustainable, right? And the way the system exists and the moral axioms on which it is founded, I don't really think it deserves anything like that. I don't think it deserves more time. I don't think it deserves to survive. As it stands, I think it is the most ideological system ever conceived in history. Like, it's more ideological than Third Reich, and it's more ideological than Soviet Union. It's both those two entities were forced by the circumstances to be pragmatic about things, right? So Stalin eventually, very early on, liberalized all the social liberalism Lenin enacted, like the divorce laws and the abortion stuff, and basically he leaned into the reactionary nature of the Russian peasant, basically, because he had to do that. It was pragmatism, and he was hated for that. Ultimately, like Trotskyists hated him, and most of the way Stalin is understood now is basically just propaganda from Trotskyists. Not that he wasn't a murderer; it's just, his worldview and his political project is colored by effectively Trotskyist propaganda, owing due to the fact that a lot of the Trotskyists ended up being the quote-unquote neoconservatives in the 50s and 60s. But at the end of all of that, when you have the system that lives on cannibalizing productive energy and productive force, and its only innovation is being more parasitic. Like, I had a tweet the last time, is that looking at some kind of, so a guy was complaining that his TV was showing an ad while it was idle, and I'm like, okay, the only market efficiency left in the world is shoving mind rape emitters into every flat surface it could possibly find, right? So this is the only thing productive can just horribly parasitize productive energy around it and generally be profane. And that's a sick and dying system, right? Like, so when people start talking about the need to de-radicalize, I mean, yeah, sure, the guy going postal, that should be prevented, obviously, but not for the sake of saving the system. It's at most for the practical individuals on the ground that would end up catching a bullet. But so in the end, you end up with this okay, so what's the solution? So okay, you cannot go postal, you cannot go. Although there is to the school shootings, there is an aspect of, drives by DMV, drives by government office, drives by politician, vaporizes a random on the street, right? Like, what's the point of that? What's the if there's just one thing you can always ask: if you're going to do this nihilistic violence because you're a dead ender and see no future in your in your world, and you want to go out with a blaze of glory instead of just quietly dying, why do you drive past all of these, right? And of course, it ends up being that most of these guys have their annual defense of the $3,000 ARs donated to them by various individuals. So yeah, it's frankly interesting that more people aren't actually becoming radicalized and doing kinetic actions against targets that aren't children in schools, which is probably something you would imagine doing, which people would end up doing if they are completely disillusioned by systematic counter pressure against them, which decidedly everyone, like every rational actor, we come to the conclusion isn't a kid at school, right? It's probably going to be like the only meaningful like political kinetic action I can think of is always against like right wingers, like be it Donald Trump, which, okay, his loyalties some might question, but even like randos like Steve Scalise ends up being all these politically kinetic actors and ends up being on the left, and there's a reason for that. It's because of the political project of the system. Fundamentally, leftists and liberals shield their radicals. They utilize, they don't condemn them, they protect them, and they
they support
give them parachutes, give them
fundamentally.
trampolines.
Yes. Well, then, okay, here's my question then. I understand that, and I do see it from a more, let's say, pragmatic perspective of just trying to protect innocent people on the ground. And also these guys from self-destructing, because I mean, they have to find a better way. But then, like, what is the, because do you have, like, any, like, I don't know, like, paths that
like I don't have.
take?
I'm going to throw my hands up and say I have nothing constructive. I don't know anything. I just, the only way I see through it is just to wait for the system to collapse somehow. If that is even possible, if that is even something that is in the current hyper-managerial global instant communication sort of control grid, if quote unquote collapse is even possible. Like I don't think it is. I think you actually can
that's
end
just
up
it though.
limping
Like, okay,
for
so
100 years like this.
what if I said, like, I think because there are some things that are changing. Like, men are turning to basically the church, and if not because to find a woman, but just to, like, essentially, let's say, save themselves from becoming too like black-pilled, and finding like a community there and support there. And I don't mean like these like Protestant churches that are they're subject to this kind of woke bullshit. I mean like the Eastern Orthodox that came out of like the Bolshevik Revolution, and they're looking for a place there, and they're finding it. Like Orthodox churches in the United States at least are seeing like immense growth there, more so than the Protestants, obviously, and the even the Catholic one. I mean, I assume you're not a religious person, and correct me if I'm wrong on that.
Well, I'm a baptized Catholic, but I'm not practicing. I come from I don't actually know what the religious breakdown is. I mean, it's an Eastern European country, so it's fairly religious. I think it's not like majority atheist yet. I think some neighboring countries are.
Yeah. So I mean, like, and again, this isn't to like address the issues I'm bringing up. What I'm bringing up is that these things are happening. They can't really be stopped. I think that ultimately Andrew Tate's more like his take on the cause and the sort of diagnosis of the problem is pretty spot on. And Warren Farrell's kind of like trying to be let's say, a bit idealistic in presenting this as a way to sell his book in the hopes that his book will, change things. But I don't think that I don't think that's a solution in the long run, because we have, what we need is to change people at a deeper level, and they have to choose that. And I don't think that that's going to, happen because of some piece of legislation or something in the system. It's got to happen in people on the ground at the bottom level, at the lowest possible, at the lowest level. And I think that men are choosing that. I'm seeing that because modernity itself, I think they're seeing that as the enemy. Now, I don't know if modernity is the system, but it is definitely either a product of or is the producer of it.
Yeah, then it's a question of, okay, what's the ideal, or what's a good enough outcome? Is good enough outcome these groups of men sort of creating parallel, so these sort of isolated parallel pockets, isolated parallel societies where they sort of just can live a dignified life, right? I don't know with the state of women. Basically, what if any woman would go for that? I'm gonna admit that I don't know. Well, what's the state currently with women? For my end, or not, it's not that I try really. Another thing is a lot of my circumstances, which are great, which I can't complain about. I'm fairly content, but it's a life of it's a monastic life, the life I'm living, right? Which is not going to be for everyone. And I'm mostly fine with that. If I never find the woman I would like to, but if I never find that, I'm kind of okay with it because I know what the score is. Is or me? It is possible. I will partially thinking about it. Have I psyoped myself into that? Is it actually not that bad out there? Could I? The thing is, I don't even know where I would go. So where I would go to find a woman, right? So it's mostly down to me being social and isolated, and being in front of the computer is good enough for me.
You're basically an outside observer commenting on what.
Yeah, so I cannot model the situation for the average person through my lived experience, because my lived experience is pretty marginal.
Yeah, most men don't want to live that monastic life. And so yes, and the thing is too is that well, I guess we don't really have to care about that stuff, but I was going to say, there are groups of people they're also religious, not Christians, and they are working really hard to, become the dominant religion. And so I think that another reason why men are returning to, or at least taking an interest in religious pursuits, is because they are trying to avoid that outcome, because, they want to have kids. So they want to be with a woman who wants to have kids. And I think that it's hard to say, and I'm with you on this too, it's hard to say that if the world we see through the internet is the world, because it is a pocket, but I don't know exactly what to do either. I'm just pointing at the problem and I'm saying, here's what's going on and here's why, and what would need to change, but I'm not sure how. And so yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think the collapse is going to cause a lot of suffering, but I don't know that we can do anything about it. So I don't know. I hope so. Anyway.
Yeah. Another point I'd like to just maybe conclude on, or can talk about it more. But when people, or when men, as you mentioned, in this individual level, pursuing sort of a more reactionary mindset, or trying to wean themselves off of the systems, somatizing mechanisms and mechanisms and structures and incentives to keep them just hooked up on Reddit, internet, or various ameliorating and somatizing vices. If the men are weaning themselves off and are turning more towards quote unquote more radical politics, or views of the world, then the de-radicalization apparatus, however you pronounce apparatus, yeah. It's fundamentally the first line of first enemy line, the first thing that is. So I guess what I'm saying is de-radicalization is not desirable if you seek change of the system, right? Because de-radicalization inevitably is going to end up, something along the lines of talking to a psychiatrist, which is talking to a liberal until you agree with them. And it might be that these men who will pursue quote-unquote radical politics will end up being too edgy for someone's taste. But then it is a question of, okay, do you just want to make the bag in the system and you don't care what happens, and you just want to you want to just get your own pound of flesh and you don't really care what happens outside of that, and you would prefer you would prefer the system to just sort of prod along, just keep the train moving, or people are going to come up with loopy crazy ideologies that are not going to be palatable. But the instinct cannot then be, if you are sincere, if one is sincere about this or serious about it, is get back on Reddit, get back on plantation,
go back on the
talk to a
plantation.
psychiatrist.
Yeah, for sure. No, I don't want that either. I mean, that's what Warren Farrell's letter was about, but I don't think that solves the problem. All right, well, thank you, InQcell, for your comments. I'm going to wrap the show up. So you can stay speaking if you want to. I'm going to read some of the comments and I'm going to end the show, though. So thank you for your feedback. Appreciate it. Let's see. MGTOW Cowboy says, I think ultimately this is a political problem. Men must regain their rights within family court. Richard Bier says, things could also go the Atlas Shrugged route, too. There will be little pockets of gulch that will be hard to spot from the outside, but will be self-sustaining but not interacting with the outside. David Lowboy says, nuclear family is a bit of a historical anomaly. People lived in multi-generational families for a long time. Yes, but I'm saying, like, I call it the nuclear family because it's the nucleus, right, of extended family. I mean, when I was a kid, I grew up with my mother and father and my brothers, but I also had my cousins, my aunts, my uncles, my grandparents, and we were all like in the same, like city. We were a little bit spread out, but we were able to see each other. And I don't think that was like a weird Puerto Rican thing. I think that's like, anybody could form that. But it does have at its core, there is a mother and a father. If you want to like maximize your odds, if you're going to do that, if you're going to engage in family maxing, that's what you do. So, Loch Ness Monster says, Epstein fathered a generation of incels with his 4chan red pill movement. It all started with Gamergate boys. I hear he was on Xbox. Murder of Crows says, seems like there's only one poster in the chans. Anonymous. Yeah, there is only one poster. That's true. It could be any one of them, or it's the one. David Lowboy says Trotsky got his comeuppance in Mexico City. Let's see. MGTOW Cowboy, the message of the system / establishment is that men are always wrong, obey government and women. It's always men that overthrow tyranny. Yeah, and I think that, like, yeah, I know. That's just, yeah. Good point. Okay. Mangaka92 on Rumble says, just because people have given up on the system doesn't mean they'll violently tear it down. Well, most of them are just going to check out, is what I'm saying. And you could call that radical, too, because if enough men leave, they just stop supporting it. Guess what happens to the infrastructure? It's not like women are going to take those jobs. Let's see. Mangaka also says, we're one Warren Farrell book away from utopia. Then he says, hermit maxing. That's referring to InQcell. MGTOW Cowboy says, Jewish philosopher Otto Wagner summarized it best, saying, basically almost all social problems stem from out-of-control women in society. And then he says, pursuant to scorched earth ideology, men should accept and advocate the use of prostitutes. Men should also push for legislation of prostitution. Let's see. David Lowboy says, watch In the Name of the Rose. Great movie with monks, Sean Connery, Christian Slater. Oh, that sounds like a good one. I like those guys. Mangaka says, Allison moment. I don't know what you mean by that. MGTOW Cowboy says, this guy is over intellectualizing. Men just need to start resisting in any way. Well, I mean,
Okay, let's see how fast you get FBI door knock on your door. Resisting. You don't resist the most complex security apparatus in history. Like, what the hell what does that mean?
I don't know. That's a MGTOW cowboy, so he's gonna do it from his cabin in the woods. Lost Vein says, then men date and think they are the exclusion and do everything right. Men wake up not by other men but by women. Oh, yeah. I mean, that's unfortunate. It shouldn't be that way, in my opinion. I think that waiting for women to like do something is it's why things are just getting worse. I think men need to like, get together and work something out. Daniel Forgak says the issue that comes to mind with potential radicalization is the left co-opting it, since that is their preferred method. Well, and I think that they want people blackpilled and violent to justify like really cracking down. Egregious Charles says nuclear family was a part of what might be called a molecular family. It was always there in any successful civilization. Yeah, I like I said, it's at the core of something. It's not just it's not in isolation, And yet people think that that's what it means. And I think that that's like this 1950s thing where it's like, oh yeah, there were no aunts and uncles and grandparents and cousins. And yeah, no, I don't even think it was true then. Anyway, Ilya Kuryakin says, hi. Hello, Ilya. Sean Connery is in the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. Yeah, I actually, that's a guilty pleasure of mine. All right. Anyway, thank you for all of your comments. Thank you, InQCell, for your thoughts on this. I appreciate it. I'm going to end the show here. Let me know what you guys think. Have you seen these videos? Yeah, I'd like to get your thoughts in the comments below. So, with that said, if you guys like this video, please hit like, subscribe if you're not already subscribed, hit the bell for notifications, leave me a comment. Let me know what you guys think about what we talked about on the show today, and share this video because sharing is caring. Thank you guys so much for coming on this X Space. And I'll see you guys in the next one.
Men's rights activists are machines, dude. Okay? They are literal machines. They are talking point machines. They are impossible to fucking deal with, especially if you have like a couple dudes who have good memory on top of that too. Holy shit, you're fucked.